Today, dozens arrested after violent clashes between Israeli football fans and pro-Palestinian protesters in Amsterdam. A secret recording captures a climate conference chief appearing to discuss fossil fuel deals. The US Justice Department charges an Iran-based man over an alleged plot to kill Donald Trump. And Neil Danaher named Victoria's Australian of the Year for 2025 after raising millions for motor neuron disease research. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ruby Cornish. Authorities in the Netherlands have given police extra powers and implemented a ban on protests and face coverings after clashes between Israeli football fans and pro-Palestinian protesters on the streets of Amsterdam. 62 people were arrested and 5 were treated in hospital during a night of violence the mayor of Amsterdam has described as an extraordinarily dark moment in the city's history. Europe correspondent Zoe Ford is at Amsterdam's Schiphol airport, where hundreds of Israeli soccer fans are trying to get early flights home to Tel Aviv.
Hundreds of Israeli soccer fans have been coming here to Amsterdam's Schiphol airport to try to get an early flight back to Tel Aviv because they say they just don't feel safe in Amsterdam anymore, that they'd intended to stay here for the weekend after the Europa League game on Thursday night. But following the violence that erupted on the streets, they just want to leave. They say they were leaving the game on Thursday night when they were attacked by groups of men, some on scooters, some with knives, some who were throwing punches and others who drove at people with their cars. They say they were so scared they ran for the hotels, locked the doors and stayed in their rooms and then came to the airport to try to get out of here. Here's a little of what some of the people told me about the violence that erupted and their hopes to get home safely.
It's not supposed to be like that. We went to a game to support our team that we loved, and when we go to the hotel, we got ambushed, and some of them went with knives to kill us, to stab us.
On the way to here, we're scared that somebody will come, and we look everywhere and very, very scared, so we just want to feel safe.
They tried to stab us and we fought back, and when we managed to escape, one of them got back to the car and hit us with the car, me and my friend.
I know how to run fast, so I went to my hotel. The guy opened the lobby, we get inside and then he locked the lobby, and we've been locked in the lobby for all the night.
Tensions were high on the streets of Amsterdam the day before the football. Video has emerged of a Palestinian flag being pulled off a building, while police say that the Israeli supporters set fire to a Palestinian flag and attacked a taxi. The day of the match, the Israeli fans were chanting on the streets, "Let the IDF win," and swear words at Arabs to stay away from the game. But the Amsterdam authorities have said none of this is an excuse for the violence that erupted. The mayor says this is the darkest moment for our city and I am deeply ashamed. Police say despite the fact that they deployed 200 officers that this violence was unacceptable and there cannot be any excuse for anti-Semitic behaviour. The Dutch Prime Minister has also been speaking. This is what he's had to say.
What happened last night in Amsterdam, the images and the messages we've received are downright scandalous and reprehensible. I think that everything should be done to track down and prosecute the perpetrators. This is simply anti-Semitic violence against Israelis. This is happening in 2024. This is beyond all limits and out of proportion.
Benjamin Netanyahu has described all of this as a horrifying incident and demanded that the Dutch authorities take swift action against the rioters. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has condemned the anti-Arab chanting and the attack on the Palestinian flag and called on the Dutch government to protect Palestinians and the Arabs who live here in the Netherlands. Police have been given extra powers to stop and search anybody they believe may be suspicious. And there's also a ban for the next 3 days on any protests or face coverings.
A senior official overseeing this year's United Nations Global Conference on tackling climate change has been filmed offering to arrange business meetings about potential fossil fuel deals. Elna Sultanov from the host nation Azerbaijan was secretly recorded by an activist who was pretending to be an investor interested in sponsoring the COP29 meeting, which starts on Monday.
COP29 is definitely the most important event of this year.
It's the world's biggest climate summit.
Everyone needs to come together.
And here is why. The apocalyptic floods that hit Spain 2 weeks ago are a terrifying reminder of the kind of extreme weather climate change will bring. But the chief executive of the COP29 team has other things on his mind.
We have a lot of pipeline infrastructure. We have a lot of gas fields that are to be developed.
Mr. Sultanov thinks he's talking to a potential sponsor. In fact, the man is from the human rights organisation Global Witness and is posing as the head of a Hong Kong company which wants to make fossil fuel investments. Mr. Sultanov, who is also the Deputy Energy Minister of Azerbaijan, does talk about tackling climate change.
So the purpose is solving climate crisis. So as long as anybody, including oil gas companies, could come with solutions, our doors are open.
Mr. Sultanov is also on the board of SOCAR, the Azeri state oil and gas company. And he wasn't just open to climate solutions, he was open to discussions about oil and gas deals too.
There are a lot of joint ventures that could be established, potential joint ventures. Our SOCAR trading is trading oil and gas all over the world, including in Asia.
He's eager to help get discussions going.
This is something that you need to be talking to SOCAR, and I would be happy to create a contact between yourself and them, your team and their team, so that they can start discussions.
A couple of weeks later, the Hong Kong investment company received an email. One of SOCAR's most senior executives wants to meet in Baku and says Mr. Sultanov said to get in touch. Setting up meetings to discuss potential fossil fuel deals appears to be a serious breach of the standards of conduct expected of a COP official. These UN climate conferences are supposed to be about getting rid of oil and gas, not selling more of the stuff. The UN's Code of Conduct says officials should remain impartial and should try to avoid conflicts of interest. The Costa Rican diplomat Cristiana Figueres was in charge of the UN climate process during the landmark COP conference in Paris in 2015.
It's completely unacceptable. The expectation that anyone would go to the COP to cut new deals on fossil fuels is not only contrary and egregious to what a conference of the parties on climate change is, it is frankly a betrayal of that very process.
Neither the Azeri COP29 team or SOCAR offered any response to our request for comment. The UN did not comment directly, but stressed its requirement for impartiality from all officials. Last year, the BBC obtained leaked documents which revealed plans by the UAE to use its role as host of COP28 to strike oil and gas deals. Yet, for the first time, the world agreed the need to transition away from fossil fuels. It shows progress could still be made at COP29.
The US Justice Department has charged an Iran-based man over a plot to kill President-elect Donald Trump. The plan had allegedly been sanctioned by the Islamic Republic's military. Global Affairs editor John Lyons reports from Washington.
The Department of Justice has announced a short time ago that a man they describe as an Iranian asset, Fahad Shakeri, 51, had informed, conceded to law enforcement officers here in America that he was tasked on October the 7th this year with providing a plan to kill Donald Trump. Fahad Shakeri had been in an American prison here for 14 years, and it's believed or alleged that during that time in prison, he had got to know these two US citizens who are believed or alleged to be part of this plot. Now, the Americans have arrested the two Americans. They're in custody right now in New York. Fahad Shakeri himself, however, is believed to be in Iran. They're not sure he's in Iran, but he's certainly not in America. And they talk about him also surveilling two Jewish American citizens in New York, and that there was a bounty or a reward to kill them. And this was essentially, according to the Department of Justice, a plot to go after or kill people who had been anti the regime in Iran. And now what's really important about this is that Donald Trump, as an alleged target, was the president in his first term when he authorised the killing of Qasem Soleimani in 2000 and 2020. Qasem Soleimani was the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So he's a hero in Iran, and it was apparently in a response to that the Iranians wanted to allegedly take out this plot to kill Donald Trump.
John Lyons there. Several explosions have occurred near Beirut International Airport. Lebanese media says overnight at least 12 air raids hit the capital in the space of an hour. The Israeli military has not claimed responsibility, but Israel has been striking the Lebanese capital since its ground campaign across the border at the end of September and its fight against the Iran-backed Hezbollah militia. Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it has used fighter jets to attack what it calls the headquarters of the terrorist organisation Hezbollah in the city of Zur in southern Lebanon. It claims to have killed dozens of Hezbollah militants and destroyed several military buildings. The United Nations has found women and children make up the majority of verified deaths in Gaza. The UN Human Rights Office says the statistics suggest Israel has committed a systematic violation of international law. Middle East correspondent Eric Twarchek reports.
The UN Human Rights Office says it's verified more than 8,000 deaths inside Gaza. That's far fewer than the 43,000 reported by the Palestinian Ministry of Health. But of those, the UN says the majority, nearly 70%, were women and children. And that accords with the assertion by Palestinian authorities that most of the people killed in Israel's bombardment and ground invasion are civilians. The UN says this finding suggests Israel is committing systematic violations of international law, notably the principles of distinction and proportionality. That means how Israel identifies targets and how many civilian casualties it considers are acceptable. Israel's mission to the United Nations says the report ignores the realities on the ground in Gaza, particularly the role of Hamas, the Palestinian militant group which governed the territory, and its responsibility for civilian harm. Hamas is embedded amongst the civilian population, Israel argues, and it's impossible to attack Hamas targets without endangering civilians. This all comes as an international group of experts, the Famine Review Committee, warns that famine is imminent, or that there is a strong likelihood that famine is imminent in parts of northern Gaza. International agencies and the United States have been warning for some time now that Israel's offensive in northern Gaza, in which it's closed off large parts of the north, intensified its operations and bombardments, and told many, many residents to leave, were endangering the lives of the civilians in that area. The United States has written to Israel saying not enough food is getting into the north, and in response to some of that criticism, Israel has promised to open another crossing for aid into Gaza. It says planning is underway and preliminary engineering work needs to take place before that crossing can be opened, but the crossing is at Kisufim, which goes into southern Gaza. And what we've heard of Israel's plans and its continuing operations in the north are that those civilians who've been displaced as yet aren't being allowed to go back. And we don't know if this situation is going to get even worse. The Famine Review Committee warns that if immediate action is not taken, then famine will be in place in parts of the north.
Eric Twarchek there. Investigations are underway after a Qantas flight was forced to make an emergency landing yesterday. A flight bound for Brisbane returned to Sydney Airport after an engine failure during takeoff. The incident sparked a grass fire next to one of the airport's runways. The pilot has been commended for dealing with the emergency calmly. Detectives in Victoria are investigating a fire at a tobacconist in Geelong. Emergency services were called to the shop in Nor Lane following reports of the fire early this morning. It's believed the offender rammed a vehicle into the premises and set it alight. Police are investigating whether the fire is linked to other recent incidents. AFL legend and motor neuron disease campaigner Neil Danaher has been named Victoria's Australian of the Year. It's been just over a decade since Danaher was diagnosed with the illness. Since then, the 63-year-old has campaigned for a cure and co-founded the charity Fight MND. Danaher will join other state and territory award winners as finalists for the National Awards on Australia Day next year. The operator of a jumping castle, which became untethered by a wind gust, has appeared in court this week over her alleged part in the tragedy. 6 children were killed in the incident 3 years ago. Beck Pridham watched the proceedings at the Devonport Magistrates Court.
It was a December day in 2021 that the news rippled around the world.
The northwest Tasmanian community of Devonport is reeling tonight after a shocking tragedy at a primary school.
It is with a heavy heart that I can confirm a 6th child has lost their life.
6 children had been killed and 3 seriously injured when a gust of wind, described in the court as a mini tornado, lifted the jumping castle into the air at an end-of-school year event. Trading as Tazorb, Rosemary Gamble was the operator of the jumping castle. This week, she's appeared in court, charged with failing to comply with her duty to health and safety, to which she's pleaded not guilty. Watching on, parents of the young victims carrying their children's images with them as they arrived at the Devonport Magistrates Court. Prosecutors allege Ms Gamble didn't properly secure the castle and used only 4 instead of 8 pegs. Ms Gamble's lawyer told the court the jumping castle, bought from a company called East Inflatables, only came with 4 pegs and no instructions, that she'd had to find her own online. He also said the court would hear the wind gust was so extreme, none of the suggested interventions would have prevented it lifting. Prosecutors also allege Ms Gamble failed to train her workers properly. One of those who set up the castle that day was Robert Monty, Ms Gamble's partner. He told the hearing he and Ms Gamble weren't formally trained, saying they'd done a lot of YouTube searching, watching other people, seeing how they set up castles. Jesse Barrett also helped set up the inflatable that day. He recounted the moment it was whipped into the air, saying he'd looked at Rosemary or Robert to see if it was real and just started running after it. That it reached about 10 metres high, then touched the ground for a split second, and that's when the kids fell out, and then it went up again. A video from the United States was played in the court, with a content warning given to families beforehand. It depicts a jumping castle with no children on it being carried away by a dust devil.
The jumper flew up like 100 feet, and you just seen it like spin and landed on the neighbor's house.
It's been an emotional first week. Families of the victims have filled the courtroom each day. They've cried and embraced during some of the more harrowing elements. And Ms Gamble wept as the extent of the children's injuries were detailed.
The hearing's expected to finish at the end of next week. Beck Pridham, ABC News, Devonport.
The idea of moving from a bustling city to a remote part of Australia won't appeal to everyone. But with cost of living on the rise, more people are opting for a tree change in places where houses are cheaper. Some have found the move comes with other unexpected benefits.
The outback town of Silverton has a population below 50. A perfect option for this couple from the New South Wales Southern Highlands searching for a place to live out their farm life dream.
I can look out my window today and I can see cows walking past, which is owned by the community, or the horses and what else? Oh, and the donkeys just up the road.
The Greens discovered Silverton during a caravan trip across the state. They arrived to find their future home up for sale.
She let us stay for a couple of nights, sort of test drive the house, stayed in, walked around, met a couple of the locals and just sort of went from there.
The couple has been living in Silverton since August and have adjusted to days filled with gardening, catching up with locals and the occasional drink at the nearby pub. The move has also helped their daughter, who was struggling to find a place to live.
One thing that we could do was if we got a house that was still in our price range, we could keep the family home still and she could use it and look after it, and she'd have safety there.
New research from the Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute shows, as well as employment and lifestyle reasons, housing affordability is increasingly becoming a key reason people are moving to regional areas. Conrad Brown and Shona Collins moved from the Gold Coast to Wilcannia. They too leaving behind a home for their adult daughter.
She puts in lots of hours.
Lots of hours, and she's worked really, really hard, but there's always having your children and the expenses with that and food and...
The couple now runs a cafe in the remote town and say the locals in Wilcannia have made them feel more than welcome.
The people are just beautiful in this town. Yeah, their hearts, they come out, they smile all the time and that, they're just happy to see you. And I think food's to their heart as well.
Showing home is where the heart is in the outback. Grace Sutter, ABC News, Broken Hill.
Elephants at the Berlin Zoo have been observed using a hose to prank each other. Scientists have published research looking at how the elephants are intelligent enough to understand how the item works and use it as a type of tool. The team found one elephant that had a sophisticated showering technique and another who regularly tried to stop the flow of water.
Another interesting behavior we observed came from a bystander elephant, Anjali. Now what Anjali was doing is she was kinking and clamping Mary's showering hose. What we wonder is if Anjali was trying to sabotage Mary's showering behavior.
Cheeky. Let's get the sports headlines now with Jared Coote.
Pakistan has levelled up the one-day international series with Australia following a comprehensive 9-wicket victory at the Adelaide Oval. Australia was sent into bat and bowled out for just 163. Steve Smith top scored with 35. Haris Rauf took 5 wickets for Pakistan and Shaheen Afridi took 3. In response, Pakistan lost just the 1 wicket before reaching the target, with Sam Ayub making 82 and Abdullah Shafiq 64. The deciding Game 3 is in Perth on Sunday.
We weren't quite at our best with the bat in Melbourne either. We were able to sneak over the line as you suggested. So yeah, we've got to go to Perth with a clear plan, clear method. We're committed to the style that we want to play, and the big thing about that is I think we've won 16 out of the last 19 games, and we've got some changing personnel within that, but we believe in the style that we want to play as a group, and then it's just the nuance within that, getting that right, the execution within that.
North Melbourne is through to a home AFLW preliminary final after securing a 7-point win over Adelaide, 5 goals 8-38 to 5-1-31. Bella Eddy kicked 2 crucial goals in 5 minutes in the third quarter, tipping the game in North Melbourne's favour. Jasmine Garner was influential for the Roos, finishing with 9 disposals and 10 clearances, while Chelsea Rendall was brilliant for the Crows, finishing with 22 disposals and 2 goals. Adelaide will get another chance to continue their season when they take on the winner of Fremantle and Essendon later today. Well, the Wallabies have held their final training session in London before taking on England tomorrow morning at Twickenham. Australia heads into the match having lost 5 of its past 6 matches. Rugby League convert Joseph Akuso Suali'i will make his Wallabies debut in the match. Wallabies captain Harry Wilson says the 21-year-old has quickly built up the game awareness that he needs.
Yeah, super excited for Joey to get his opportunity. Obviously, he hasn't played a professional rugby game of rugby union, but he's played his whole time in schoolboys, played his rugby union, has always loved his rugby union and had a very good career in rugby league in such a short time at only 21 years old. So he's picked up the game very quickly. The way he's trained has been awesome, and just the way he's gelled into the group, it's like he's been here for a while. So I know he hasn't played much rugby union the past few years, but he's definitely got a lot of knowledge in the game.
Nicholas Milanovic hat-trick has guided the Western Sydney Wanderers to a 4-1 win over the Newcastle Jets in the A-League men's competition. The 22-year-old scored the opener in just the 22nd minute with a free kick. His second came just over 10 minutes later before he completed the hat-trick with a penalty in the second half. That result ends a 6-game losing streak at home for the Wanderers. Meanwhile, in the A-League women's competition, Western United and Central Coast played out a 0-0 draw in Melbourne. Jalen Adams has helped the Sydney Kings come from behind to beat South East Melbourne Phoenix 74-69 in the NBL. The Phoenix led by 10 points in the final quarter before the Kings scored an incredible 20 points to 5 in the final 7 minutes to snatch victory. Adams finished with 20 points against his former side, while Xavier Cook scored 17 points. The Kings are now 4th with 7 wins and 5 losses, while the Phoenix are back in 8th position. Meanwhile, in the WNBL, the Bendigo Spirit thrashed the Capitals 99-76 in Canberra. Sammy Whitcomb finished with 25 points, 7 rebounds and 9 assists for the Spirit.
Let's take a look at the weather now with Jessica Rendall.
Hello, let's start in Queensland where things are warming up this weekend. Some severe heatwave conditions in central and northern parts of the state with high fire danger too for much of that region. Showers and thunderstorms possibly severe over parts of the southeast. In New South Wales, in the ACT, isolated showers along the coast and adjacent ranges with a possible afternoon thunderstorm in the far northeast corner. Fine elsewhere, sunny over the northern inland and partly cloudy in the south. Victoria will be partly cloudy today with the slight chance of showers about the southwest coast. Dry elsewhere with some cool to mild temperatures. Down in Tassie, showers about the northwest and far south. Fine elsewhere with some clouds about. Back on the mainland, South Australia can expect some showers and thunderstorms today, mostly about central and northern parts. Dry elsewhere with some cloud about. Heading west to WA now, where showers are forecast for parts of the south coast. Dry and mostly sunny elsewhere with some very warm temperatures in the north. Severe heatwave conditions for much of that region, as well as over parts of the NT, where it'll be mostly sunny today with a possible thunderstorm over central and southern parts. Let's look ahead now to tomorrow's forecast for the capital cities. Brisbane and Sydney can expect a possible shower, mostly sunny for Canberra. Partly cloudy in Melbourne and in Hobart. Partly cloudy too for Adelaide, sunny in Perth and partly cloudy in Darwin, getting to a top of 35 degrees there.
And before we go, Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral has celebrated the delivery of 3 new bells ahead of its much anticipated reopening on December 8th. The iconic building has been closed for restorations for 5 years after a devastating fire in 2019. Flames have ravaged the World Heritage listed medieval landmark and toppled its spire. At the time, French President Emmanuel Macron set an ambitious goal of rebuilding the Notre Dame within 5 years. One of the bells was used during the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. It'll be installed inside the cathedral alongside 2 smaller ones. There's more on the ABC News app and on ABC iView. I'm Ruby Cornish. Thanks for your company.